Welcome in, everyone. This is another edition of the Full-Time Roundup podcast. It is your host, Daniel Brackett, back for another week. I'm joined by two guests today. Harrison Clark, friend of the show. He's been with us talking footy quite a bit recently, and then Max Umansky. Max has been on before. I think last time he was on, we talked about our predictions for how the Premier League was going to end. We ended up both being so wrong. It wasn't even funny. But it is wonderful to have you both on the show today to talk about the first week of domestic football in Europe.
Happy to be here.
Yeah.
Excited it's all back for sure.
Now, it's Monday. It is 5:10. You can call it a happy hour if you want to. And we just got done watching Spurs play Leicester City. Just a reference from our last pod. Me and Harrison talked in length about how we, like Spurs. We like the Solanke signing. I thought, they could really challenge for top four, if not top three. And then I basically said that Leicester are for sure going to be the worst team in the Premier League this year. And from what I saw, Spurs should have definitely went up multiple goals in the first half, but there was always that chance for Leicester to get back into the game, and who other than Jamie Vardy to do so. Max, you are a Spurs fan, so I would love to hear your instant match reaction to that one, and feel free not to pull any punches here.
Yeah, well, it was great, just to see them back and playing again. It's been a while, and of course, it was just a fun-filled roller coaster as it is every match. But I thought the first 60 minutes, especially the entire first half, it should have been 3-0 and then two early chances in the second half. But you knew Spurs were going to pull a Spurs at some point. If they didn't capitalize and get a second goal, inevitably they were just going to mess up at some point defensively. And then, Leicester's first clear-cut chance at goal just landed in the back of the net. And from there was a huge momentum shift. The King Power Stadium was rocking. You can tell they were amped, and it was just basically a back and forth match from that moment onwards. And I think the next best chance was that Vardy breakaway that luckily Vicario made a big save there, like he does so often for us. But, there were some positives for sure. I thought they looked better defensively than last season, more composed. And then this year, or I guess this game, they just lacked that composure in the final third of the pitch. Just way too many chances missed. I mean, you have 11 corners in the first half and
Which is
7 shots
nuts.
on target. You didn't nuts, yeah, and you don't score from any of them. But so again, with that positives, I like to see the young guys that they just signed come on with Bergvall and Archie Gray. Bergvall did make one mistake that almost led to a goal, but I thought him and Gray looked pretty good in the midfield. And I thought Madison played just like he did the first half of the season last year. I thought he was the best player on the pitch by a mile. So yeah, there's positives, but typical Spurs fashion, just can't get the result. That's definitely 2 points lost at the end of the day. But hopefully they turned around at home against Everton on Saturday.
Yeah, not a good start for sure. Seeing the pre-match, you see Harry Winks starting for Leicester. That's always a good chuckle as a former Spurs man. But then you got Oliver Skip. So Spurs are just an absolute feeder of midfielders, just shipping them off to Leicester City. But yeah, no, I do agree. I think one of my big questions for Spurs is James Madison going to be the same one from the first half of the season, or is he going to kind of lose his spot like he did in the second half? And I totally agree with your sentiment that he looked back to his best. Now, Harrison, I'd like to hear your input here on how our man Dominic Solanke fared in this one.
Didn't really seem like he had too many clear-cut chances. He was always kind of in and around it, but wasn't able to finish anything. He had the one where he got at the edge of the box, turned, and then had basically a clear look at goal, but he hit it right at the keeper. That was really his best chance of the game. I felt like overall like Maxime mentioned, like I think everything was created by Madison. Like it's just a matter of who he was able to find. And at times in the first half, it was Son. They were kind of going down that left flank the entire time in the first half, and they were having a lot of chances through that. But for the number 9, I don't think that he necessarily had as many chances as he would have liked, and that maybe is part of why Tottenham weren't able to break through for his second goal.
I completely agree. Max, any remaining thoughts on Spurs? Do you think, we haven't had time to see kind of what Big Ange is going to have to say in the presser here, but who do you play next, and do you think that the lads will be able to kind of bounce back from this performance?
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of echo Harrison too, in the first half, I think those 2 headers he had as well, they should have been put away. They were kind of like a little bit ahead of him. He kind of just got a little nick on it, but not enough power to really threaten the keeper. But I know they have Everton next, and in my opinion, out of all 20 teams this weekend, they looked by far the worst. So, and it's at home, not at Goodison, so they should hopefully turn that around and get a good result there. The one thing I do have to say about Spurs, which is a little bit of a hot take, but I think, Daniel, I mentioned this to you earlier in the summer. Um, Spurs are basically going through a huge revamp, huge youth signings they're going through, and they're basically clearing house from everyone they've had 2 years ago. Where you look at the team that Conte had versus now, it's completely different. But I think this is like Son's last go around because I didn't really like him last season, although he did provide, I think it was 17 goals, 10 assists, but he was starting to slow down, and I think today he was a ghost. I didn't really see him do anything at all today on that left side, and that's his position. So I don't know if he needs to figure it out or someone else needs to play there. Like, because I noticed Son gets good when he's off the bench. If he gets dropped and then he'll come on. I remember 2 seasons ago he got dropped and then came on as a substitute and scored a hat trick against Leicester. I was hoping for something like that today, but didn't see it. I hope he turns it around. I didn't like that he was completely out of the game today. But again, a lot of positives, and hopefully they'll turn around against Everton.
Absolutely. Oh, what's up?
Were you surprised that Kulusevski started? Because wasn't he very good for Tottenham in the preseason?
Well, I was surprised he didn't start. Yeah, I was hoping
Or
that
sorry,
he would
that's what I
play.
meant.
Yeah,
Didn't start.
yeah. I was hoping he'd play where Madison was playing today, and then that midfield pivot would be Madison and Sarr. But then it was basically Madison playing with Kulusevski where he came on, and then Bentancur was there, and Johnson out on the right. I was hoping he would start because, like you said, yeah, he was balling in preseason. I think, yeah, and he had 2 goals to finish off against Bayern as well. So that was shocking to see. I didn't think that was very deserved. But we'll see. It's tough because I think Kulusevski's best in the middle, and if Madison's playing like he did today, I think Madison should play there. Because I like Johnson out on that right side with his pace, and he has a really good ball in. There was that one really, really good chance in the first half off that set piece where Madison played it to Johnson, and Johnson just slid it in one time across the box. I think Son should have been there. He was running in a little late, but that's back to my point with Son. He needs to get more involved. I just feel like he was a ghost today. Barely saw him on the pitch, but we'll see. Maybe he'll change up some tactics. Kulusevski can start against Everton. That'd be nice. I thought he had a good little, 20-minute cameo when he came on, but we'll see where it goes from there.
Yeah, the biggest thing when it came to Son, and Son had that really good partnership with Kane, and that kind of partnership develops over time. So I think over the next couple of weeks, Solanke is going to be really working with Son to develop that partnership. I agree. Brennan Johnson is kind of shoo-in for me at that right. But yeah, no, it was a great game. Within one text, I kind of summed it up, I think, pretty perfect. As soon as Vardy scored, I said, that's just so Spurs, dominating the entire match and then giving away a shit goal like that. But, if you told me in 2022 that Vardy would still be kicking it in the Premier League, I'd probably tell you no shot. And so it's good to have a character like him in the Premier League. I feel like he's just box office. But I actually wanted to get to the next game here. Chelsea versus Manchester City. Sunday, 11:30 kickoff. And, City win 2-0 here, Harrison. But, I think there are positives to come out of this game for Chelsea. Enzo Maresca, a Pep disciple. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that game, and if you're, very positive about this, or sort of neutral, or very down on this result.
Yeah, I'm kind of neutral. I think there's both positives and negatives. I think that honestly, you could make an argument who was the better team in the game. I kind of feel like Chelsea after the Holland goal. They were a little rattled. I felt like the first 15 minutes couldn't really find their game, and then after that, slowly started to play their game and got some good chances. I think if we talk about negatives, I mean, Nicholas Jackson is kind of still there for me. Just the inability to finish. He had the clear cut one right in front of the net that you put it anywhere else besides right at Ederson, it's in the net. And the goal that he scored in the first half, there was no need to be offside on that. Just laziness, really. But there were some good signs I thought as well. Like I thought Romeo Lavia looked really good. We didn't get to see him hardly at all last year, and he looked strong in the midfield. And really the fact that as resilient as we were, I think because I thought City came out strong, and the fact that it was only 1-0 and we hadn't really found our game for a while, and it remained 1-0 until Kovacic scored late, is a good sign as well that the defense really held up. Enzo Fernandez, I don't think they need to find a good position for him because the fact that he's playing right behind the striker is just something that does not suit him, and he looks so uncomfortable. And his first touch was horrific on Sunday. So I don't know whether it means you start Neto soon and you move maybe Nkunku to the 10, which I don't think is a bad idea, or you do find an option where Cole Palmer plays the 10. I think those are just the things that Maresca is going to find out over time. But for sure, first game of the season with a new manager, there's going to be some growing pains. And the fact that we hung in with City, arguably the best team in Europe for as long as we did, is a good sign for me.
Absolutely. When it comes to the midfield of Chelsea, I feel like we're seeing at least Lavia, Casado, and Enzo Fernandez kind of all start together. That's the first time we've seen that. But then watching Kovacic, who they shipped off to City, kind of peruse right through that midfield and score that goal. That's got to hurt for Chelsea fans. But Harris or Max, did you have any other takeaways in terms of this match?
Yeah, I kind of agree with some of the stuff that Harrison said. I think the biggest takeaway from the Chelsea City game, from a Chelsea perspective, that I thought Lavia looked very great, very good in the midfield, and that was definitely a big piece. The Blues were missing last season, but I just think there's so many internal problems at the moment with Chelsea, and in my opinion, I think they kind of look, first game of the season at home at Stamford Bridge, and they looked lifeless, in my opinion. You have the best team in the country, if not the world, at your ground, and they just, I don't know, they didn't look up for it to me. And in my opinion as well, I didn't think City even played that great because Chelsea did have some moments. I think like City, for example, like Ederson looked lost, in my opinion. Chelsea didn't have too many clear-cut chances, but almost anytime the ball got near Ederson, there was a mistake from him that almost led to a goal very easily, turning nothing into something. But problems with Chelsea is, you have a college lecture class filled of players and your team and a new coach. There's just too much going on. It's kind of like, Forest 2 years ago when they got promoted, just buying players left and right. Like it's like a FIFA career mode, and I think that just has a big issue. There's like attitude problems because some players think they should play, but aren't even getting in the 18 because there's just not enough room. And I just think that's the problem with Chelsea at the moment. But there's, again, still positives. I guess I wouldn't say it's a good result. I mean, I didn't expect Chelsea to win that game because of City. And, in preseason, I think it was 4-1 when they played just a couple weeks ago. But yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they didn't turn up for the occasion. First game at home, you have the champions at your ground, and they just seem lifeless. Like, for example, that game, like Liverpool Ipswich, they have one of the best teams in the league at their ground, their first game back in the Prem in, 20 plus years. And they didn't win 2-0. They lost 2-0 just like Chelsea did. But I thought like that result for Ipswich was better than Chelsea because they brought life to that game. Unlike Chelsea, they just looked lackluster in my opinion. But
I get that. And, this was a really good opportunity for Chelsea in terms of just no Rodri in the lineup. Foden didn't even start. He was on the
came on
bench
for Savinho.
Yeah.
Came on at halftime.
Yeah. So, I mean, I was interested to see how Pep, would line up here. Savio starting over Grealish. I think is everything that you need to see in terms of what the signing for Grealish has become. I mean, the guy is just rotting on the bench, and it seems like he's going to continue so for the foreseeable future here, which is really sad just because I thought Grealish was a really fun player to watch beforehand. But I guess he'll take his 300K a week and right off into the sunset eventually. But yeah, no, I mean, we'll have to kind of see how these teams progress throughout the year. But you mentioned Liverpool and Ipswich, Max. This was the first game that I got to watch under the slot era. And, there were definitely some panic buttons in that first half. And that halftime, I was pretty concerned in terms of how that first half set. And like you said, Ipswich really brought it to Liverpool in the first half. Amari Hutchinson, Chelsea product, I thought looked really dangerous on the counter. So it'll be interesting how teams kind of game plan for him, as he's probably the most creative and best player for Ipswich and will probably continue to be so. But Kieran McKenna, I've spoke very highly of him. I know a bunch of other people, footballing minds, who speak very highly of him. And, Arne Slot is going to build out of the back. You saw a lot of inverted midfield with 3 at the back. And then Trent would kind of slide into midfield. And McKenna actually went with a block of 4 as the pressing line. And I don't think I've ever seen that before, as just a bank of 4. And Liverpool basically just could not pass out of it unless they went long. There was no connectivity between Van Dijk and Kwanzaa and the 6 and McAllister and Szoboszlai, which is very odd because I'm not used to seeing that. But then, Slot made some changes, brought on Konate in the second half. Things started opening up, and then the inevitable came in the 56th minute. So obviously it was a tale of 2 halves. I was, very happy with how proactive Slot was in terms of the substitution at half. He didn't think Kwanzaa was good enough. Therefore, he subbed him. And, even though he didn't look happy at the end of the day, it's about winning, and that's all that matters. And so I'm sure Kwanzaa will learn from it and come back better. But, obviously Ipswich will probably be a team that gets relegated. So who the hell knows how Liverpool will line up against, much of a better team. What did you guys think?
I think Buzzed Mo Salah could be a different breed. I like his new look, and he's looking good. He's actually so dominant on the opening day. You were saying the stats to me. It was like, what is it? He's scored in his last 5.
8 straight. It's like 5 to 8 straight. Like he's just bags. He's a absolute money on opening day in terms of scoring a goal or having a product. And now he's scored as many goals in 30 minutes less than Henry in terms of 300 mark. And then I think he's like 15 goals from Henry's Premier League goal time record as well. So he's shattering records on opening day as well as just the Premier League in general.
Do you think Jota is the long-term play at number 9, or Darwin?
I mean, you could even throw Gakpo in there. That's going to be the question of the day. Jota, 1,000% is our second best finisher on the team, other than Salah, obviously. And so the guy's a killer. He kind of played second fiddle under Klopp. He scores. The rest of his game, I would not say is very pretty. It's not polished. He's good in tight spaces, but can't really dribble or drive or have that final pass. But the man can just be an absolute poacher in the box. So it really depends on what kind of team is lining up. Is Liverpool going to be possession based, breaking a team down, or is it going to be quick counters? And today Saturday was more over the top, quick counterattack play. So I thought that suited Jota, but maybe like a Gakpo connecting false number 9 for a team that we really got to break down, a low block, things like that. Because that's what Ipswich actually didn't do, surprisingly, as a relegation team. Max, what takeaways did you have if you were able to watch it?
Yeah, I mean, first thing to say is I like how Slot adapts to the game, and he's not afraid to make changes like he did in the second half, and then it opened up a lot more clearly, and they looked really good in the second half, especially. But I think with Jota, it's inevitable. I think he's just going to get hurt again for 3 months, like he does every year. And
Yeah.
then, as good as he is, he's a very good poacher. Other than that, I just don't feel like he brings too much, but he's very good in the box, and he will put the ball in the back of the net, as his goal record shows. I was shocked that Gakpo didn't start. I think his form in the Euros is crazy good. And I think besides the own goals, wasn't he the Golden Boot winner in the Euros?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, he played really good on that left side. And it's tough, competing with Diaz. But for me, I don't think Szoboszlai is that good. I think he's, like, I don't know. He has a lot of expectations when he was first signed. I just don't think he's really lived up to it. He did in the first couple months, but ever since then, I think his form has dipped. If I were a slot, I don't know. If Diaz can play in the middle, in behind the striker, I think that'd be good. But then his pace is kind of gone, because I think Gakpo needs to play on that left side, because he was a huge threat for Netherlands these Euros, and I just feel like he should play. And him not getting the minutes that he needs on that left side is a miss for Liverpool. And then Darwin as well. I think he's the type of player that once he finds form, it'll stay. He just needs to get on the field and bag that one goal and stay. I think long term he's going to be that main number 9 for you guys, just because I don't think Jota has just the fitness. I mean, knock on wood, I hope he doesn't get hurt. I just feel like every year he's out for at least 2 months at a time every season with some sort of knee injury. But we'll see. I think Liverpool did look really, really good. I think out of all the big 6 teams that played this weekend, I think them and Arsenal looked the best. It's crazy how with what Arne Slot is working with, basically not having any signings, just keeping the same team. I think he's been doing a fantastic job. And I didn't really watch them at all preseason, but they looked really good against Ipswich Town. Again, a newly promoted team, probably going to go right back down at the end of the season, but away from home, that atmosphere was rocking, and they looked really good going forward. But I did think they were a little vulnerable in the back, especially on the counterattacks. But other than that, I think there was a lot of positive takeaways for Liverpool.
A couple things.
Agree.
Yeah, a couple things that you mentioned there, as well as things I noticed. I think Robertson, I've loved Andy Robertson for a long time now. I think it was $8 million from Hull City or something like that. He's been a servant of the club for almost a decade. He's been miles off of it for now 12 months. With Klopp's heavy metal football, he that's his style, bombing forward, putting balls in the box. But I think Slot needs a possession-based left back. I mean, there was a point where he literally overlapped Van Dijk into the middle to play a ball. And, he doesn't use his right. He's not great, just possession-based. He might even, have to play an inverted midfielder at some point within the system. And that's just not Robbo. He's 30 years old at this point. So, this is our make it, break it season for him. And I think that, he could be on his way out in the summer. We just don't have, I don't know if Simikas is good enough to replace him at left back. But that's a position of need. I was actually pretty impressed with Gravenberch at the 6. So maybe that'll be okay with Endo as a replacement. And then when it comes to Szoboszlai, I actually thought he played pretty well today. That was one of the encouraging ones, because like you, I agree he was pretty rubbish last year. And we spent a pretty good penny on him. So it was important for him to be back, to fitness. Would you agree that in my power rankings of forwards, I'd go Salah, Diaz, Gakpo, Jota, Darwin? Do you think that's fair? And just in terms of just a straight power ranking all the way down, because that's kind of where my head's at.
Yeah, I can agree with that, but it's crazy just having him at the bottom ranking. I think that Darwin just has the biggest ceiling, which is kind of crazy. Like, if he just gets into it, I think he can be very, very dangerous. And similar to Szoboszlai, you guys spent a pretty penny on him as well, so I hope it works out for him. But yeah, it's tough, but it's a good problem to have, right? At the end of the day, there's a lot of depth coming off the bench, especially in the that front three / midfield areas for you guys. So it's good. We'll see how the season comes, but I don't know. I think Jota played fine. It's just I'm worried for his fitness. I just feel like he's might get hurt again. I don't know. It just seems like there's a recurring knee problem for him. So we'll see where it comes down to.
Harrison?
Yeah, I probably agree with your list. Just it's almost hard, just recency bias, thinking about what Darwin was doing at Copa America and the goals that he was bagging to have him at the bottom of that list. But I mean, he hasn't really shown it for Liverpool, so it's hard for me to necessarily put him any higher. And I think I would like to see Gakpo at least get a little more run to see if he's able to carry out what he did at the Euros more into the Liverpool team. But for the time being, I think that rankings is correct.
Also, I don't know if you guys saw it, but just the video of Ed Sheeran on the tractor, the welcoming back to the Premier League video was so funny. So if you haven't watched that, go ahead and give that a watch. That was pretty good. But in terms of Premier League, we kind of broke down the three biggest games in our opinion. Happened to be our teams as well, but they were fun ones. Is there any other games, storylines, things you noticed this weekend in terms of the Prem that anyone wanted to mention?
I would say the fact that United walked away with 3 points after the first night is massive for them, just in a way to keep some sort of momentum going from the start of the year. You don't want to necessarily drop points at home to a team in Fulham who, again, we don't necessarily think are going to be that great this year. And the fact that it was one of your new signings in Xerxes coming off the bench with that kind of finish late. Pretty big moment, honestly. I don't really know how it's all going to shake out with exactly who they're going to play with Xerxes and Højlund, but the fact that they were able to somehow come out at 3 points in that game, I think is pretty big for United.
Max?
Yeah, I think that was a big result for them. 1-0, first game of the season. I think they could have walked away with more. Like Bruno missed a couple good chances. I think Bruno looked amazing. I think he can be a big problem this season against opposition sides for sure if he keeps playing like he did. But in addition to United, one team I want to shout out is Brighton. I think they look – I mean, I can't tell if they just looked really good or Everton looked really bad, but they looked really good. They have a young coach. I don't know what they have in their scouting department, man, but they just keep bringing in new players. And this coach, never heard of him, some 31-year-old guy from Germany. I thought they looked great. They were moving the ball really nice. All 3 goals were really clinical. And they capitalized on Everton's mistakes. Everton just kept giving the ball away. They might be in big, big trouble if they play like they did against Brighton. Bad thing, too, is because they're good at home, and that was a really, really poor performance at Goodison for them. So they might be in trouble. I feel like the last few seasons they've always been on the relegation cusp, but people say they're too big to go down. But who knows? But Brighton, man, I mean, they always start really well. I hope they can continue it out. I really like watching them play. I like their style of play, their whole business model as well, and their recruitment. So definitely wanted to shout them out. I thought Arsenal, I know we haven't really talked about them. They looked really, really good against Wolves. This could be their year if, City don't live up to the hype they had the past couple seasons. I don't know how long Rodgers is going to be out for, but it's clear to see that they're a completely different team when he's not on the field. So who knows? It's going to be an interesting Prem season for sure.
Going back to the United game, I think, Garnacho not starting was super interesting. Maybe that had to deal with when he reported back to camp, or maybe the fitness levels weren't there. But, when he came on, you just see that link up with Bruno, who also, like you said, Max, looked fantastic. It's really about just putting the ball in the back of the net. They didn't start with a 9. And when you're starting Mason Mount as your 10, you're really asking a lot, because I don't know how they tricked the world into selling him for 70 million. He is a terrible player, in my opinion. And I actually kind of liked him coming out of Chelsea. So don't know really what happened there. But Xerxes, I thought he had such a good debut. He connected play. He did have more of a Kane-esque role where he would come back and collect the ball. He wasn't like an out-and-out 9 like Højlund is. So it's a completely different look at 9. Just how are you going to use Højlund and Xerxes when they're both fit? That's the question of the day for Ten Hag. But he's got now, I think I counted 9 or 10 people of Dutch influence, either from playing in the Eredivisie, being Dutch, or in things like that. So, I mean, the total football Dutch style runs deep in Manchester United, and it's going to be really interesting how this kind of shakes out. A team that really caught my eye was, sorry, I just completely blanked on this. Aston Villa, West Ham. This match was fun. I know Harry leaned West Ham in this one with Lopetegui at the helm at home with the bubbles, but I thought Aston Villa's attacking prowess is just so understated in terms of they lost Diaby. You got Duran, you got Watkins, Morgan Rogers looked immense. Bailey looked great. They have so many guys going forward in that midfield duo. The Belgians, Tielemans and Onana, were just so good in the midfield. I was waiting to see on Aston Villa how they respond against a really hard opening day, but they kind of passed and checked all the boxes for me for week 1.
Yeah, they were solid. And the fact that they got the win with Watkins just not looking like himself. And I don't know if that's just a previous injury that he has or whatever, but coming off in like the 60th minute, something obviously you don't see very often. But yeah, Bailey down the wing was a threat all game. And even like a guy who was talked about a lot in transfer rumors this offseason, Duran off the bench. That guy's an animal. Kind of a guy that I was hoping Chelsea would go after, and there were some reports that were saying that they were looking at him, but he's a good little second option as if you don't have Watkins there. So Villa still have plenty of depth, even with the loss of Diaby, as we mentioned. I think that West Ham, this little project that they're undergoing with all these new signings is probably going to take a little bit, but once they find their footing, I think they'll be all right. But a pretty good first game for Emery and the boys.
Anything to add, Max?
Yeah, no, that game almost slipped my mind as well. But Villa, that's a really good result for them, considering the amount of summer signings that West Ham did. I was hoping to see more of Somerville. I really liked him at Leeds in the Championship last season. I think he should have came on a little earlier. I don't know if it's something to just kind of integrate him a little later on. But again, kind of like what Harrison said, once these new signings kind of get worked into the system more, I think we'll see him a lot more. That's a really, really good result for Villa away from home. And Watkins, yeah, he didn't really do anything, wasn't himself. But having someone like Duran as a backup is really good. But their midfield is great. Onana, that was a really, really powerful header. They're a good team. It's going to be interesting to see how they go as the season continues with them being in the Champions League this season. I know they've been used to playing in Europe with the Conference League last season. But once that fixture overload comes, the depth is really important, and they do have some decent depth, but we'll see where it goes for them. But West Ham, yeah, I expected more out of them. I thought Fulkrug was also going to start, and I guess he didn't. They still back Antonio. I don't know if that's something they'll also with Somerville. We'll just integrate him into the 11.
So bad too.
Yeah.
Not Fulkrug, but
Antonio sucked.
Yeah,
he was terrible,
which is crazy to see him start. So we'll see how it goes. I'm sure next game Fulkrug will probably get the nod in the 11, but yeah, it was definitely a really, really good result for Villa being away from home at West Ham. Not an easy place to go to. So,
I mean, Villa were busy, but they brought Ramsey, Duran, Maatsen, Philogene off the bench. Diego Carlos, Barkley, and Buendia didn't even play. That's 85% of their bench. I mean, that is a quality roster. And not even to mention Kamara, their main CDM is out till October. And then they got Mings, who's been out, another center back. I mean, this team they did the shopping in terms of playing, 2 times a week. So, me and Harrison both predicted Aston Villa being in the top 4 at our 4th position. Max, after watching this, where do you kind of see them shake out? Because I know they're going to be competing with Tottenham for this top 4, top 6 kind of spots here.
Yeah, it's tough because they do have a good amount of depth, but I could see him finishing fourth again. Like I almost forgot that Barkley was signed with them, and then he was an amazing player with Luton last year. So I'm interested to see how he'll fit into this team. But yeah, if I just have such high hopes for Spurs that I think they'll. I'm a little biased here. I think they'll get it over them. I think they'll figure it out. I mean, that wasn't a great result today for them. Bad point away from home, but we'll see as the fixtures come. It's still too early to call, in my opinion. You can't just judge what's going to happen. Come May after just one game in August, but we'll see. It's going to be close. I think it's going to be similar to last season where we're not going to know top 4, top 6 even until probably the final match day of the year. So we'll see. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm going to give Spurs the edge still for now. I got to give them fourth place because I thought they'd finish third this season. I was really, really hopeful for them. So I can't just back out now.
You poor soul.
I know.
What do you, Max? What do you think of Newcastle this year? Because they're gonna be not going to be playing any Champions League. Gutsy first win with no red card, or with the red card. I mean, I think that
first of all,
with the top 4 was Spurs also.
That red card. The
Horrible.
officiating was
horrible.
The Premier League is back because of how bad the officiating was this weekend.
Horrible,
dear
dude.
God, there was 4 or 5 incidents, and I was like, oh yeah, I forgot. I watched the best league of the world with the shittiest refs. It's unbelievable.
Just the
but
worst,
yes,
the worst
Atrocious.
refs. Yeah,
Atrocious.
I don't know. Newcastle, I forgot they don't have Europe, so I think if Isak stays healthy, I think they'll be in pretty good shape. I just don't think they have a really out-and-out replacement for him. And I know last season he was out for a little bit. I know they have Callum Wilson, but he's just, not really the player he once was. And it'll be interesting to see how they go into the picture with them not being in Europe. I think I have them finishing 6th this season when I did my preseason table layout. So we'll see. And again, like it said, yes, a red card, but you're at home against Southampton. I thought Southampton didn't look terrible. And then the goal they scored, McCarthy just made a huge mistake.
Horrible.
So yeah. And Newcastle had some chance. Southampton had some chances as well. I think Brendan Diaz is decent. And I don't think I think Southampton on paper is probably maybe Ipswich, I guess, but they're probably one of the worst teams. I think they're going to go back down as well. So I wouldn't say it's like the best result considering it was at home, but we'll see. I still think they'll probably no Europe will help because teams like Spurs, United, and Villa all having Europe this season with the fixture conjectures and then injuries. You never know what will happen. But I think both Villa and Spurs, even with Europe in the picture, they should finish above Newcastle.
Speaking of McCarthy, that guy's so old that he could be
I was surprised
our father.
He
could be our
Bazunu was in the start. Yeah,
he's
old.
Bazunu is
old.
talented.
Yeah,
you could see the gray. He looks like a manager more than a player, which is
very
wild.
much so. Very much so.
But yeah, it was a great Premier League weekend. Just to wanted to touch on some of the bigger picture things within all of the leagues, and we'll kind of move to Spain, as Germany, it was with the Polkai, so not really many things kind of draw off that. But starting with Real Madrid, me and Harrison talked about them briefly when it came to Atalanta, the Atalanta Super Cup, and they shockingly draw Mallorca. And hard to believe that Mallorca was kind of a sneaky, tough opponent last year, but Real Madrid opened the scoring and just could not see the game away. Are we worried about this, or do you think this is kind of that subtle reminder Real Madrid needed in the start of a season as they won the Champions League, won La Liga 2 years in a row, or looking to win La Liga 2 years in a row as well?
I wouldn't say I'm nervous yet. It is the first game of the season, so there's obviously plenty of time. It kind of reminded me a lot of the Spurs game today, how the first half they were jamming it down Mallorca the entire first half and just couldn't find another goal. And then really just one moment from Mallorca and they were able to tie it. And Madrid were never able to find another. So I don't know. I'm not too worried about Madrid, obviously long term. I think that's just gonna have to keep building the chemistry up front and The goal they scored was beautiful. I mean, Vinny little back heel to Rodrigo to an amazing finish, but obviously not the way they hope to start the season. And then a Furlan Mendy for absolutely no reason, like right at the end. So won't have him next game. Pretty stupid red card. And then only 1 point on a weekend where the team that is going to be challenging them most of the season picks up all 3 on the road.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I mean, I'm sure this was talked about in most group chats that that people were in, but looking at that starting lineup for Real Madrid, it just is not even fair. I mean, that starting 11 was just insane. Mbappe wearing the 9 has still not set in yet for me. I just think there's going to be so much drama with the Brazilians and him. Rodrigo scored that banger, then didn't square it back to him one time. And I know, the PSG Mbappe is absolutely ripping his teammates to shreds for that. So, I think this is a good reminder of, these other teams can play and, they still have a lot to play for. Thankfully, Atletico, from what I last checked, drew as well. So it was only Barcelona that won. So not the worst result in the world, but still, when you're talking about opening day and it's not, a top 10 opponent, you'd probably want to get the 3 points against Mallorca.
Yeah, I mean, pretty good opportunities for the other 2 teams to at least get out to a lead to start the year. That's always nice to have a couple extra points over the presumed title favorites, but they'll be fine. Also, I think that you mentioned in the last podcast the fact that Don Carlo is the one leading the helm. Like, he's going to be able to try to put the egos aside, even though it's hard to, obviously, with top talent like that. I mean, I think he's the perfect guy to have in that situation.
No doubt. With all the, Max, with this whole Mbappe saga plus everything else, do you think Madrid are too top heavy, or do you think, Don Carlo, like Harrison mentioned, is going to be just able to figure it out and should be another almost not walk in the park, but it should be another La Liga title for them?
I don't know. It'll be interesting. I wonder if it's going to be like another Galactico thing where, 20 years ago when they had that team with all those stacked players, they didn't really win much. It's just too many egos in the locker room. And, you bring in a player like Mbappe to already a stacked team that just won the Champions League. You think, oh, wow, they're just going to be even more unstoppable now. But now it just raises the question of egos, and it can cause issues. I know, a 1-1 result against Mallorca, I think that's just a fluke. They'll still be fine. I don't know. It might be like how, the Real Madrid team of 2016 when they won the 3 Champions Leagues in a row, where they weren't doing too well in the league, really. I think one of the seasons they actually finished 3rd behind Atletico Madrid, but they were still dominating Europe. I think that's just going to be the case where they're just going to, focus on Europe for now, and then hoping that teams like Barca and Atletico will drop points and they'll just gain points elsewhere. But it'll be interesting to see. I didn't really get to watch that game at all, but from the images I saw on X, how it just seemed like Mallorca was parking the bus like crazy. Just saw images of that front 3, and then the entire back line and midfield was all behind the ball, just pressing them like crazy. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, Mbappe is just so electric, man, and how rapid he is. I saw that one run he went on, and it's just going to be interesting to see. But I think an ego issue is what's going to come to play. And I just, when he was on his way out of PSG, he was telling players like Neymar and Messi to leave because he wanted to be the star man. And, you can see PSG, they have an ego problem. That's why they're not really winning anything besides the league. And it can be the same thing with this Real Madrid team. I think they're in another Galactico era, and they might, pay the price for that and not even win anything just because of all the egos they have in the locker room.
You mentioned something good there. I feel like what was so mainstream last year, I guess you could say, was all the Real Madrid players would just talk about how great the locker room was and like how close knit those group of players were. And so, I think, this is going to be a fun watch for the neutral, especially getting to see how this is going to play out. But, at the end of the day, talent kind of oversees all, and so I think Real Madrid should be able to kind of, you know, will their way to another La Liga title and maybe a Champions League as well. Barcelona, Harrison, we mentioned, got an opening day win. The Hansi Flick era started on a good note, and La Masia played quite a bit in this game. What'd you think?
Yeah, I really wasn't able to catch much of it at all. I just saw some of the highlights. A lot of kids for Barcelona, which we were talking about last time, is something we're probably going to see, especially with the injuries they have right now. And then, obviously, the guys who have been in the team in the past will make their way back sometime here in the season. But to start out, obviously, it's huge to get 3 points on the road, um, and I think that's something we'll see a lot. And I think a lot of it has to do with the familiarity with Hansi Flick is Robert Lewandowski, and he found the net twice, and I think it's probably going to be a pretty big season for him in a system that he's very familiar with back at his time at Bayern. So, I mean, we talk about Madrid probably running away with the title this year, and I mentioned last time I still like this Barcelona team a lot, and I think that they definitely can make things weird if they're able to get wins, especially with playing with a lot of their academy kids early. If they're able to find points in those games before they get the big dogs back, then they could be a serious problem.
Yeah, midfield pivot was Marcasado and Bernal. So no Frankie, no Pedri. Pedri came on later in the game, and then Lamine Yamal with an assist. So he's starting off the season kind of how he finished the Euros. Paul Kubarsi with the start, Balde with the start, who got injured, so hopefully he recovers, fairly quickly. But yeah, no, I think, with this young team, we saw them get a well-earned result in beating Valencia. But at the same time, I thought, Valencia looked dangerous at times, and Barcelona were very negligent with the ball. And so they had a few giveaways that was, not the best I've seen. And even Ter Stegen had a few errant passes. Maybe it's just preseason or first game jitters, and players are still getting up to speed. But we'll have to see if they can maintain that Barcelona level, throughout every game, throughout the whole season, as they seem to be wildly inconsistent the last couple seasons. To move on just quickly, I thought the Serie A, two interesting results, both Milan teams drawing. I think me and Harrison had them as 1 and 2 respectively. So obviously that hurt, but I got to see Rafa Leao and Pulisic kind of inner swap the 10 position, and I thought that was super interesting. Also, Alexis Salamakers, he's usually a winger, but he played left back, right back, and right wing in one game. So that was props to him for being
Versatile.
But yeah, no, I'm pretty shocked about both Milan teams kind of losing. AC Milan coming back from behind, and Inter Milan conceding a 95th minute penalty.
Yeah, weird start for both of them. I think obviously they'll both be fine. And both games, I mean, we didn't even see, well, we saw a start from Lautaro, but he didn't get on the score sheet. And then Morata didn't start, and he still ended up scoring late, which was the first of two before, the game ended in a draw. I think they'll both be fine. It will be interesting to see like what the long-term position is with Christian Pulisic, because obviously we know what he can do on the wing, but him in the 10 is a different we haven't really seen a whole lot of it, to be honest. So I don't know. It's exciting. I think that we get to see Pulisic in different positions, and also something for Pochettino to see where it could be his best position in the team. So
yeah, no. Also, another result, Napoli.
Ew.
The Conte era started out so poorly. I texted you this, Harrison. I said, you know what? I know Conte's known for his antics in pressers, but the words he was saying in that presser, saying, look, our squad is depleted. It's bad. And I need a lot of guys if I'm going to do anything with this team. that went from me thinking that Napoli could challenge top 4 to Napoli might finish where they were last season in like 8th. I mean,
Yeah, I didn't know where you were going to go with that.
I don't. Yeah, no, not that far. But I mean, because I think he can still do some good stuff there. But yeah, Napoli just. I was looking at that lineup and it was meh. And then I looked at the bench and it was yikes. And so if their starting lineup is meh and one or two guys get injured, especially Kvaratskhelia, I mean, they're done for. And they've made a couple signings and they haven't really hit yet. So De Laurentiis is going to have to, do some spending here in the next couple weeks. Or Conte, he could walk from this thing, and it could be an absolute nightmare for Napoli.
Dude, yeah. I mean, Kavicha getting hurt obviously is just massive, especially in this kind of team that has Giovanni Simeone as their striker. I don't know if that's just going to cut it.
Gross.
They need Lukaku bad. It's just simple as that. They need a guy up front who's actually going to put the ball in the back of the net. They have some players I think like I mentioned, Kavicha is very good. I think Politano can create, and they have a very veteran midfield with Lobotka and Anguissa. But again, there's nobody in this team where you're really scared of where the goals are going to come from. So. Yeah, I think they need Lukaku bad, or this could get ugly quick for Conte. Also, did they change their logo to just a full?
Yeah. Liverpool did that as well in terms of just the logo on the screen, and it kind of threw me off. I missed the boat on that one.
See that.
But the last Serie A team I wanted to mention really was not only how disappointed I was in Roma tying Calgary, as Calgary barely stayed up, and I thought this offseason for Roma was great, but Juventus, we slept on them hard. Now, they did play Como, and Como's a newly promoted side, but I thought, they looked a lot better under Malta. And, we saw some guys, this guy named Mbangula had a goal and assist. Haven't really done much research, don't really know much about him either, to be honest. But he looked really good. And this could be, another – he's actually an academy player now that I'm looking into it. This could be one of those signings that new coach Malta comes in and he just absolutely elevates a youngster in front of our eyes. So Tim Weah got on the board. That's a first. So I'll take that. And, maybe it's not so doom and gloom for Juventus after all, even though they're shoving out half their squad to be transferred out at this point.
Yeah, they did start 2 academy players, Mbangula and Yildiz, who had a
Yildiz is fire, though.
Yeah, Turkey player. I remember him. But we'll see if that ends up being their long-term starting lineup. I mean, obviously, you have some decent players on the bench like Weston McKennie, but you also have a ton of guys who just didn't even play because of transfer rumors and stuff like that, etc. So we have no idea what the long-term outlook is with Juventus, but getting a shutout at home is nice. Also, shout out Atalanta today because
big time.
They could be a problem. 4-0 and carrying the momentum. I thought they played it well in the Super Cup against Madrid, carrying it straight into Serie A with a big 4-0 win against Lecce. We'll see how long Lookman is out, because you did mention that it could be a big loss because he's been a huge threat for them the past 6 months or so, especially in their big games, thinking back to the Europa League final, the hat trick he scored. But really good start for both Juventus and Atalanta.
No, absolutely. And the last thing, to kind of leave it on this note, Ajax. What a fall from grace. I mean, they just lost to a team that's called NAC Breda. I mean, someone tweeted this. I think it was like an MLS account. I mean, non-removed. This was a team that was playing Max's team, Tottenham, in a Champions League semifinal and was beating the likes of some of the most elite teams in Europe. And now they can't even win against the newly promoted Eredivisie side. It is a dire situation there. This was an excellent chance for them to kind of bounce back as Arne Slot left Feyenoord and PSV, is just is really solid. But I'm hoping it's not going to be the same old Ajax from last season where they start out really poorly and then they make up for their terrible results kind of by putting a string of results together at the end.
Yeah, just they don't have anybody even left from that team that played Spurs.
Oh, they're all gone.
So
All gone.
yeah, they've completely cleaned house, and
They all went to
this is
Manchester
fun.
United.
They did, yeah. They followed Eric. Obviously, they're missing the most crucial piece. Serginho Dest, he was the most crucial piece, but
He was.
But yeah, they're. I don't even know how to like describe Ajax this past year or so. They've been absolutely horrific. But and Feyenoord like got off on the same foot with a completely new manager, just killing who was it they played? Zool.
Yeah.
Shout out Charlotte FC legend Calvin Stengs.
Yeah, 2 goals and assists. That knee looks perfectly fine to me, so don't know really what Zorn was doing there. No one really watches French league football. I can't really blame you. We're not even going to mention it other than PSG. But go ahead and take a look at the Zerbi ball in Marseille. He's got something going on, something special. Mason Greenwood on the right, Wahi up top, and Harit, and I can't remember who the left winger is, but he's assembled quite a squad. He's got the legends, Pierre Hobier as the CDM general, and they absolutely ran it up against Brest, who was one of the better teams in Ligue 1 last year. So if you like De Zerbi from Brighton, go ahead and check Marseille's highlights out because he's bringing that attractive brand of football to France. And there's been a ton of teams that have kind of copied that De Zerbi way since he kind of went to Brighton. So you two, Harrison, Max, thank you so much for being a part of the opening day or opening weekend of domestic soccer. I look forward to many other chats, and good luck to all of your teams. Cheers, lads.